I understand that there are quite a few new students and parents arriving today, so John said that he's going to hang by the back door and dash out when he needs to, so I understand. Well, I want to thank all of you for this fabulous invitation. Very exciting to me that I get to be invited to speak on my very favorite, most topic in the whole planet, transformative learning. I have a proposition that Buckminster Fuller suggested to me quite a number of years ago, and that was the idea that every child born in the world is a genius. But out of 10,000 children born in the world, 9,999 of them will be systematically de-geniused by the time they reach the 5th grade, by well-intentioned, well-meaning adults that prevent their exploration of the natural world. And there is this concept of educational fundamentalism that says we have to keep people in rows and we have to separate them by ability and age and sex and capacity and everything else. We have to test them, we have to separate them. That kind of model actually helps to de-genius people. And so I propose to you that the purpose of education, why we're all here, the purpose of education is the liberation of human genius. And I also believe that transformative learning is our access point to that. It's up to us to really be those who can help to discover that. So it really is a pleasure for me to be here, and I want to say that speaking to all of you is really a definition of preaching to the choir, because you all get it. You've focused your attention on this for quite some time. And congratulations for all the good work and the difficult ground that's been broken to bring transformative learning forward. We're here at a time that is a great time in human history. It's a great turning that's occurring. And if you look at the general patterns, we're coming out of, as general systems theory describes it, we're coming out of an important stage and a new one is starting. So we're doing hospice for unsustainable practices in business and society, and we're midwifing into the world some new ways of being together, a time of great collaboration and cooperation that can really help things move along into a more sustainable future for all of us. And you've signed on for it, so congratulations and thanks for being here at this time in human history. You know, when one phase ends and a new one starts, there's generally what's described as chaos. You seeing any of that in the world? You know, Buckminster Fuller said, humanity is in its final exam. He was absolutely convinced in his time that we could make it as a human race, that there's enough for everyone. And it's only when folks like you decide that what we're doing today isn't just for ourselves, but it's for, as the indigenous say, for 7 generations from now, that it really matters. So our purpose today is to examine this critical incidence of transformation so that we can become better facilitators of this turning, that we can become better facilitators of the transformation that's trying to emerge here. The question then is, so what's next for us? We know the good work we've done up until now. We can see a lot more. What's next? You know, how do we create a next chapter for humanity when we realize that most of the problems we're facing are the unintended consequence of our problem-solving strategies? You've heard the phrase that Einstein said, right? You can't solve a problem at the level of thinking that put the problem there. Well, our problem-solving strategies have created the problems that we face today. Or as Pogo said, we have met the enemy and he is us. So how do you solve a problem when the mental model that put it there is the one that we're using to solve the problem? It's an intractable situation, you see. You really can't get out of that loop. Or can we? You see, one thing that we could consider is the idea that we could improve the status quo. You know, that many folks who work to make the world a better place take what it is that we have right now and try to find efficiencies or try to make it a little bit better, but it's still within the mental model that put the present situation in place. The French have a famous phrase for the conundrum that evolves from that. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Why is that human nature? Why is that true? Why is that a phrase that we all recognize? Or as the Declaration of Independence said, very interesting phrase. It said, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they've become accustomed. In another way of saying that, we'd rather have a familiar problem than an unfamiliar solution. That's human nature. So we're up against ourselves again. Do you see the problem that we have? We do want to see things get better, but how do we do that? Now, we also know that, hey, whether we participate or not, change is going to happen. Have we figured that one out? Right? Has education changed at all in the last 10 years? Yeah, how about cell phone technology? I just got back from Eastern Oregon. My sister-in-law still has a flip phone. How many of you are proud users of flip phones today? Yeah, see? Flip phone user and proud of it. You know, it's amazing how technology has changed. Remember when you had to text with that? C is 3 button clicks, right? Can you meet me? You know, it's amazing how things have shifted. So change is the only constant. Then what do we have to do? Essentially, what we need to do is we need to be able to increase our mental complexity in order to bring about this new future. If you're familiar with developmental theory, what it says is there's a couple of stages we go through in childhood and adolescence. By the time we get through school, hopefully by the time we finish high school or certainly college, we're going to be at this third developmental level, which is the level called the socialized mind. The socialized mind comes with the uncritically accepted views of the society that raised you, which includes your family system, it includes your community, it includes your schools, the institutions of religion, whatever you happen to have been through, you get to become an adult in the society that raised you, in the culture that's in power in your society. You are now at the level of socialized mind. At some point, even though you're doing everything that you're supposed to, sometimes things don't work out. Have you noticed? Like, I did everything they told me to, and it still didn't work, right? At some point, we get to what we call the self-authoring mind, which means, you know, maybe not everything they told me is exactly right. Maybe I can choose the way I go. Now, that developmental shift is very important. In fact, this is a transformational leap that occurs. As Robert Keegan talks about it, we're handed this lens that we look through at the world. But at some point when we become self-authoring, what we're looking through is something that we can suddenly look at and say, whoa, where? How did I get this lens? What if I had a different lens? Oh, now I can make meaning of the world in a different way. And it's that meaning making that's quite central to the principle of transformation, right? We're familiar with all that, right? Well, my belief is that we need to know how we can facilitate and perhaps accelerate that developmental leap. So I became very curious about how does that happen? Like, what are the key pieces? And maybe we can facilitate that, help it along. Maybe not, but maybe we could. Very important, I believe, is the next one. Once we become self-authoring, we then need truly to become self-transforming. And there's a measurement that Keegan and Leahy use, the SOI, that allows, they've studied tens of thousands of subjects with this, and they realized that, at least in business and industry, only about 2% of those that they measure were operating at this level called the self-transforming mind. It really is a demonstration of something very important. And Peter Senge talked about the importance, and it's also tying into why I think we need to be talking about this and examining it, and I'm so delighted that you've committed a day to doing so. He wrote a book called The Necessary Revolution, and he said, if we're going to create a sustainable future for humanity, there are three things we need to consider. Number one is we have to be able to see the big picture. We have to become systems thinkers. We have to be able to see that we're participating in creating a set of unintended consequences by our own actions. We have to be able to see the active perpetuation of the problem, the very problems we're trying to solve. Secondly, we have to be able to collaborate across boundaries. Boundaries would also be silos. Well, this is my department, that's your department. Can we communicate? Can we collaborate? Can we resource share? Can we collectively solve problems? Can we collectively be present to what's trying to emerge? And perhaps most important is to seek futures we truly desire. And I love what Dr. Bartel referred to as this idea of possibility. Do you know the idea of coaching? A coach sees the possibility of the win, right? So the coach is always working with the members of the team to be able to win the game. But the coach doesn't go out on the field wondering who's going to win. Because if the coach is just going out to see whose team is better, and is my team going to win or is the other team going to win, then the coach is just a participant. They're in the stands like everybody else. The coach embodies the possibility of the win, so that the players all see that possibility through the eyes of the coach. So holding that place of that possibility and embodying it fully as the coach watches the play of the players, the coach knows that behavior isn't going to get to that win. That possibility isn't going to happen if that play continues in this way. Are you getting how this works? So we're always then able, by seeking a future we truly desire, we always have this ability to compare what it's not. This behavior is not that possibility. And so it is absolutely critical that we have a possibility that we truly desire, one that's worth playing for, one that's worth surviving for, one that's worth thriving for, one that's worth doing all that it's possible to do. in the time that we have available. So my encouragement is that, in fact, what we do is we embrace this emerging future. And we have a challenge, unfortunately, in doing so. What if as an institution here at UCO, we as coaches of an emerging generation see that they can recognize the genius within them, and that the learning that they go through matters, that it has a value in the survival of the human race and the sustainability of our practices in the future. But the challenge that we're facing is that nobody really does like change. In fact, what they say is that we have an immunity to change. And when we see something that doesn't match our present reality, what happens is there is a knowing system within us that says, wait, I've never heard of that before. Where did that come from? It organizes our reality and actually stands as a vigilant guardian that says, none shall pass, right? Stops a new idea at the door. Why? Why would it? I mean, why does it matter if it's a new idea? What we know about mental complexity is we need to be able to integrate new ideas. We need to be more inclusive. But why would our brain say, stop it at the door? Basically, it's out of fear, right? There's a fear that something bad might actually happen in the future if we accept this new idea. Secondly, we've got a feeling system that manages our anxiety. Anybody ever had anxiety? So you probably know that feeling. We don't like it. And in fact, we use it as a recording device that says, wait, I'm feeling anxious. I shouldn't do this. Well, actually, the fact that you're anxious might be a signal that says, this is something I really should pay attention to. This is rocking my world. I wonder what it is. I wonder why I feel so nervous. If any of you have ever fallen in love, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like, whoa, I'm all aflutter. What's that about? I want more of it. But when it comes to our work situation, our heart starts racing. We think, run away, like your hair's on fire, right? What? Why is that we have a tendency to do that? And the third is what we call a change prevention system that actually thwarts challenging aspirations. That's why the good news that I have for all of you is that embodied in John Barthel and in your president, you have the opportunity to see that we're not trying to prevent change and thwart challenging aspirations. We're trying to run headlong into them. And we're trying to find, where's the pony in this big pile of you-know-what, right? There's a pony in here somewhere. We got to find it. We've got to locate what it is. Where is it in there? So I've been dancing around this idea that we're on the horns of a dilemma. You see, we really want to welcome change in and have it happen, but at the same time, we want to prevent it from occurring. And it's very interesting, what the research shows, is this disorienting dilemma is the starting point for all transformation. So it's a good news when we realize that on the one hand we want this, but on the other hand we don't want this. At that moment, that disorienting dilemma is the place where transformation always begins. Now, I suppose that we can all have a bit of a definition of what transformation is. I'm a father of 3 children. They're 33, 31, and 26. They're all gathering with me. On Friday, we're doing a big road trip. And I've invited them to come celebrate my 60th birthday with me in the wilderness between Montana and Wyoming, where I brought each of them individually at age 15 for a father-son retreat. So it's a very cool thing. And in reflecting on what it's like to become a parent, biologically it's not too tough to become a parent. And some people don't accept that as a transformational opportunity. But if you do embrace it as a transformational opportunity, being a parent for a first time is huge. Any of you have had the experience, you know what I'm talking about. This is huge. The second and third, it's more of a transactional change, if we could distinguish between transformation and transaction. And although I did not give birth to this baby, that was a transformational moment when I held my grandson for the first time, right? And as this child has grown over the last 2 years, I've really experienced a completely different. How many of you are grandparents in here? Proud to admit it, right? It's completely different, isn't it? And many grandparents will say, yeah, the best part about it is when you're done with them, you can hand them off. Like, I don't have to sleep with this all night either. But there's a completely different feel holding your first grandson compared to holding your first son. And that opportunity, if embraced, is also a transformational moment. Transformation being defined as something that you can't unsee, that you can't unfeel, right? Once you've seen it, you can't erase that. Once you've embraced it, there's no going back. You can't go back to the way it used to be. Now, there are some educators that say, if we could just get back to the good old days. I'm not going to say any more about that. But if we define transformation, we can look at transformation as being a radical shift. Transformational learning, which I think is key for all of us because this is what we're really about, is really being able to embrace these problematic frames of reference and by changing our meaning-making schemes and perspectives, we actually have new choices that are available. And transformational change is different than transformational learning. And so when John was introducing me, he said he appreciated the idea of scholar practitioner. I've been in the business of human change for 40 years now. Actually, when I was going to the University of Minnesota as a biological sciences student, I had the opportunity to be trained as a professional hypnotist. So my summer job was working in a hypnosis clinic doing professional hypnosis work. I trained dentists from the University of Minnesota to do dental surgery using hypnosis. I had the only clinically approved communications program that the Minnesota Dental Association ever offered credit for. And it was teaching them how to use waking hypnosis with clients that come into the operatory. So I got an opportunity, an interesting window into the human mind that many people don't have the opportunity to have. And I was so fascinated by this that I realized at some point that the job of the hypnotist isn't to put you into a trance to give you new choices. The purpose of the hypnotist is to awaken you from the trance you're in that makes you believe you don't have those choices already. If you say to a person in trance, you could try to move your foot, you can't move your foot, it's glued to the floor, you can't move your foot, they can't. If you say you've forgotten your name, you could try to tell me your name, but you've forgotten it. They cannot speak their name. The research that's been done has indicated that if there's, let's say, 10 cascading series of events that lets a person speak their own name, and you give them the post-hypnotic suggestion that they've forgotten their name, after the first 2 steps of that 10-step process, it aborts. They literally believe it's not available, and the brain won't function to make it possible. So when you have someone come in with a limitation that believes, I'm just no good at math, do you think that's a trance? You better believe it. Oh, art? Oh, I'm no good at art. I tried to draw when I was in 3rd grade and I got ridiculed, therefore I'm no good at art? Really? Seriously. So it's about awakening from those trances, or let me put it again, it's the mental model that they're actively maintaining that prevents them from believing they have access to those resources. The resources are within. Buckminster Fuller said, we're born genius, but we're systematically de-genius. And it's in the believing that I cannot that story's now over. The brain will just operate as if that's true. So anytime you believe that something isn't possible, my encouragement is to ask, at what point did you believe that that was the case? And what if that's no longer the case? You've been conveniently living in a comfort zone of your own fashion. And what if we no longer had that be the case? So looking at this process of transformation, I became very interested in what is that process by which a person awakens from the trance that they're in? How do they come out of that? Where do they get the discovery that there's a possibility embodied that they can actually make happen, that the lens that they're looking through isn't the way the world is, it's the way that they're seeing the world. So they can stop looking through that lens and start looking at it and have a choice about it. So in the research that I created, I knew that there were going to be 3 things. First is an antecedent state. A person's going to come into the study, and they're going to have a history that says, this is the path that has led me to where I am today. And everybody in the study, there were 100 participants in a program called the Symposium. It was called the Awaken the Dreamer, Changing the Dream Symposium by the Pachamama Alliance. So I knew, because I knew the program, I wasn't going to teach it, I couldn't do that, but I knew the program and I knew it was a transformation for a lot of folks on the planet. So I knew that there would be some kind of meaningful and significant experience that they would identify as potentially transformational. Now, I wasn't going to ask them, were you transformed by that? Because I'll get too many false negatives. People will just, oh, no, I don't think I was transformed. So I just asked, was there anything meaningful or significant that happened during that 4.5 hours? So I knew that there would be something. I thought that that would be the critical incident at which a person made the change. And then I also knew that as a result of the treatment, that there would be some kind of resultant behavior that they could then identify, evidence procedure, very important for all of us, right? Some evidence that the change occurred. Well, in the findings of the research, I discovered that this hypothesis was not correct. And I wish that there was a way in which I could show this to you and explain it right away, but instead I would like to ask you, what was it on that picture that you just saw? Einstein? Some of you saw Einstein? Did you notice a little nail at the top that was like a drawing of Einstein on a piece of paper? It was a nail. Yes? Did you all see the 3 naked bathers? You did? You saw? Okay, cool. Nobody else? Okay, we'll go on. Oh, now you want to look, right? Jeff, I'm beginning to understand this crowd a little bit. Can you see the 3 naked bathers? Who can't see them yet? Not sure? Okay, here's somebody's bum right there. There's her face. And here's another one, and there's another one. And it's some kind of pool. They're kind of looking in on the pool. Do you see it? See it now? Okay, so the wonderful thing about research is at first glance, you don't necessarily see what it is that it's called bias, right? Perceptual bias. You're always looking to see something, and good research means that you have to somehow account for that and get on the other side of it. So here's another example. You know this one? See what's in that picture there? Everybody says, yeah, some kind of cow face or something, right? That's the one we usually hear about. What is it? A horse. Yeah, there's a horse and a rider on top of the horse. There's a hat of the rider and his elbow sticking out like this. Here's the face of the horse and the front legs and the tail going back. What kind of horse is that? Palomino, is that? Pinto? What? Come on, horse people. What kind of horse is that? We're in Oklahoma. It's a female horse. Okay. At least we can identify the sex of the horse. Okay. So in this treatment, 100 people went through this symposium. What was interesting about the symposium grew out of the work of Bill and Lynn Twist, who woke up one morning, both having shared a dream. They said, I had the weirdest dream last night. I dreamt there was this indigenous man with this strange feathered headdress. And Bill said, that's what I dreamt. So they looked up on the internet and they found that it was a remote tribe in the Amazon rainforests of Ecuador. And it was the Ashwar Indians. And the Ashwar are a dream culture. A friend of theirs, John Perkins, who wrote a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, had done a lot of work in Ecuador, and so he brought Bill and Lynn to Ecuador. And the Ashwar came out of the jungles as they were standing there and said, we've been waiting for you. They're a dream culture. They reached out in the dream world to connect with the world, the modern world, because their cosmology had just moved into the next 500-year phase. We just passed out of a phase 500 years that started in 1492. It was called the Age of Discovery and Destruction. And we're moving into a new phase of 500 years where the eagle and the condor will fly together in the same sky. The eagle were a race of people who lived in the north, who lived in their minds with a deep emptiness. And so they were consuming the world to feed an emptiness that could never be satisfied. So they need to awaken that dreamer and change them from that nightmare to awaken to the world that they are actually living in. And the condor were the people of the indigenous all over the planet. And it would be a time where the eagle and condor would fly together in the same sky. That's an important cosmology prediction. And now the Pachamama Alliance was formed and in fact was instrumental in creating the first constitution in which the rights of all species are equally important. All species have a say in how things go in their country. That's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Very fascinating. So anyway, there are some powerful moments in the symposium, but those powerful moments were not the transformation. They were triggers. They were catalysts for something else that would occur. And those catalysts caused what I believe to be the true beginning of the transformation, because it caused a critical reflection. And it's through critical reflection that we begin to resolve this disorienting dilemma. So one of the disorienting dilemmas, I can't show you that film clip, I don't believe, but it's you can go online and see Julia Butterfly Hill make this statement. It's a 2-minute YouTube clip. It says, "Where is a way?" Julia Butterfly Hill lived in an old-growth forest in the top of a tree for over a year. You might have read about her. She was trying to protest the cutting down of these redwoods, the sequoias and redwoods. And she watched her friends drop to their death as loggers felled the trees that they were living in. And she says, "Where is a way? When you throw something away, where is that?" And once you hear that, it's very hard to shake it, So people described that experience as something that really hit them. But that wasn't their transformation. They had to take that home with them and think about it. So my study lasted for 30 days, and it was in there that we began to see some external manifestation of that critical reflection. So you've created here at this campus the opportunity to reflect deeply on some of the most important tenets that a person might have to address in their lifetime. And you can create all kinds of meaningful and significant experiences, but if we don't really take the time to dive deep into what that means for an individual, we're really not offering transformational learning to occur. So that was the video. But there was another important thing that happened in reviewing the research. And so I had 100 subjects. I ended up with 72 that committed to the research. I had 29 that I identified that I did depth interviews with. So it's a mixed method study, large qualitative component to it. I used, as Dr. Bartel talked about, critical incident technique, where I'm actually analyzing from the inside what was it that shifted internally. And one of the things that happened is that the meaningful and significant event was described in the verb to be, like I am. It hit me. It was the behavior of the significant incidents was described as a transient state of being. Now in Spanish, that's called estar, E-S-T-A-R. The verb to be is I am happy, and maybe later I'll be sad, right? Or I'll be hungry, I am hungry. That's a transient verb. But if I say I am a man, I am from Minnesota, that is I am a North American, that is the verb ser, which is to be. And after a person did their critical reflection, that was how they described who they were. Like, I am a person who does this now. And it was a significant movement from out here to in here, where there was an embodiment of what it was that they had wrestled with as a result of the symposium. And that's worth looking at. It's like, what is that process by which a person actually embodies the thing that they are trying to resolve? That it's that aha experience really gets in. The other thing that the research methodology gave an opportunity for is it gave an opportunity for someone having done the critical reflection to give voice to it, to actually articulate it, to set it out in front of them so that they could walk around it and see what it was that they were describing. Because if you think about it, you've got this antecedent experience and you got this resulting behavior, and something in between occurred, but what was it? It's like climbing up on a ladder and having never seen over that wall. Suddenly you see over that wall, but you have no words to describe it because you've never been there before. And giving time to be able to articulate what that means for them is also an important part of the transformational process. So the research methodology created a recursivity. You know that they say an experiment gets null and void if the experimenter influences the outcome of its own experiment. The mind, studying the mind, is always influencing the outcome of its own experiment. Transformation is the mind studying itself in order to influence the outcome of its own mental model. And the brain grows in response to the demands placed on it. So the methodology and the recursivity is actually an advantage to us, you see. So the more that you take time to study what is the internal lived experience of somebody going through transformation, the better able they are to transform. So it becomes generative. Instead of, I'm coming into this class to fix my inability to perform in this class, no, they become so excited about having learned how to learn this that they become lifelong learners from then on. Cool? Don't you think that's cool? I think it's cool. I really would encourage anybody who's thinking of supporting research in this to talk to me. I'm not going to be their methodologist on a dissertation, but I'll be happy to give them the entire methodology. It really is quite exciting. Now, what I noticed as a result of having been through this is that this mapped across very nicely to C. Otto Scharmer's work called Theory U. Is anybody familiar with Theory U in here? It's really cool. It's really cool stuff. So he says that there's really three processes, the three movements in transformation. One is sensing, one is presencing, and one is realizing. So the sensing is being able to look around at your own mental model and see what's going on. Presencing is becoming present to what's trying to emerge from outside of your own mental model, connected to the future you truly desire. There was a book by Senge, Jaworski, Scharmer, and Betty Sue Flowers called Presence. And it's all about this. And Scharmer took another 10 years of research to come out with Theory U to describe in detail what this is about. Now, as a result of my research, I realized that transformative learning is on this side of the U. And transformational change is on this side of the U. So I'm making a distinction here that I'm hoping all of you will embrace and look at in more detail. Don't assume that it's transformation, because transformation isn't enough. It's an overused term. There is a learning process, and then there is a behavioral component to that, which means realizing the future that we truly desire. And so what I'm going to cover in my workshop this afternoon are, as a result of the findings of the study, 6 initiatives of transformation. And I'm not going to let you see this or take notes on it, because I'm going to dash through it. But this is what we'll look at, is we first surface the disorienting dilemma. Bring it up. There it is. You're feeling it. Something's not working. Allow it to come to the surface. Create a safe environment to have that happen. And I can't think of any place better than a 2-year or a 4-year institution of higher ed in order for this to occur. Which means all of us need to walk that talk. And we need to be able, in here with each other, to create a safe enough environment to really tackle those gnarly problems that we're facing. We have to be able, in that safe environment, to actively challenge the mental models that put these problems here. Don't punish yourself for having the problem. Celebrate that you've identified you're living in one. Because that's really the beginning. The disorienting dilemma, yoo-hoo, that's the good news. You're on the threshold of a potential breakthrough. Contact source, which is trying to emerge, and then help to express that new awareness. Put voice to it, right? And then illuminate it in a way that others can see what it is that you've discovered. Others can begin to feel what it is that's a possibility that you're now embodying. And then let's celebrate, acknowledge those bold plans that will allow us to take action, to begin to realize the future that's trying to emerge. As Gandhi said, become the change you want to see in the world. That's really the call out to all of us as educators. We have to embody that possibility of a future for humanity in which it's worth working for, right? Simple definition of leadership, a relational and ethical process of people together attempting to accomplish positive change. And I believe transformational learning, as you all have defined it, and perhaps we've added a few more distinctions about it, it really is our opportunity to accelerate and facilitate it. So thank you very much for your great attention. Appreciate the time.